with a chance to win this. Hit it beautifully, and the Highlanders have the victory in Dunedin.
Barrett back to his feet and finding space. It's on here, surely, for the Blues. And it's Mazama who goes in. Sullivan.
Leads up, this is nice for the Hurricanes and Morby. Good ground, puts the kick ahead. He's going to win the race. Can he force it? Yes! But the Chiefs have got it done. Back into winning form.
Pulled down by Holloway. Oh, look at that! Solani. Come on in. It's a Barley Pierce. Skips out of the top ball. There's a huge moment for the Western Force. A decade of heartache is over. The Western Force beat the Brumbies.
Tēnā koutou katoa, good evening and welcome into the breakdown. Well, the countdown is on, just 2 weeks until the Super Rugby playoffs start. So we look at the playoff picture, what it could look like. Just 1 month until the All Blacks Rugby Championship squad is named, what newbies will be there, and we open up a really important conversation about mental health as well. Sir John Kerwin, Mills Muliaina, Jeff Wilson, you've got something to celebrate. Finally, your team gets a victory, Jeff.
For 6 hours, we were in the playoffs. And then the Force beat with the Force win, and we're not in the playoffs. We're now ninth. So I was celebrating, but reality is, as I know, we need to do a little bit more over the next couple of weekends to really get a chance of winning this title.
A few surprises over the weekend. Brumbies were upset with the pups that they sent. Chiefs and Blues keep winning, JK.
Hurricanes don't turn up with their full side. Talk about that later, I guess. And I've had Tre Voce di Corridoio, 3 voices of the corridor they're going to talk about later. Ooh. And 3 times someone tells you the same thing. It's pretty close to the truth.
That's when you know, Mills.
So that's 1, 2, 3.
3. In the green room 10 minutes ago. Well said. Outstanding.
Oh, well, it's time now to chat Super Rugby with Nurofen, available at Chemist Warehouse. Well, the Hurricanes went up to Hamilton without their 3 major players. No Geordie Barrett, no Ardie Savea, and without Almoa as well. Jason Holland summed it up after the game and said he's a little bit frustrated because they could have got more out of the game. Mills, is that what happened when you rest your players? Have they let an opportunity go here?
I think there's definitely opportunity for them to win that game. Had they had the players that you mentioned, I mean, big-time players win big moments, got themselves back in. The conditions were terrible, and that probably was the leveller, Jeff. The fact that, it enabled the guys that were out there, the more inexperienced guys, to really stay in the fight. But had they had those players, gee.
Yeah, think about the game and the way it was played, and the conditions were so poor. So to have Tyrell Lomax playing, all of a sudden your scrum and line out clearly operates better. Then you bring in Ardie Savea and the ability around the close, the contact parts of the game. Defensively, you'd have more effect there, and you needed a big kicking game. And we'll talk about that from the Hurricanes and Chiefs' perspective in this game. You would have had some distance on it. So all of a sudden, they've missed their opportunity, but I tell you why.
So the conversation's irrelevant.
No, this is an important part. I think it is relevant for them if you're a Hurricanes fan, because you've been denied an opportunity to possibly host not just the quarterfinal, but host a semi-final, particularly after the Brumbies lose. The context of the season changes for them, and they could have quite conceivably, if in the next 2 weeks beat the Blues and Crusaders, not just finished just second, they could have finished first. Their fans have been denied that opportunity by not playing their best side.
I get that, but it's irrelevant because the question we need to answer is, should this happen or not? Right? Because I get why a coach would do it. Yeah. Probably overthinking stuff. I get that the players need breaks, but I'm pretty sure the All Blacks don't want them to break during a derby, the best games of the year. That's where you want to see your players under pressure. So I get all that, but should this happen? For the fans, should it happen?
It's a great question.
That's what we need to answer. And I think we probably don't need to answer it now. We probably need to answer it at the end of the year because there's resting players working for us.
There'll be a lot of what-ifs, right? There'll be a what-ifs if they go on and win a Title C. Rest of those guys, you know, didn't play them over that point. But they chose to play them against the Moana Pasifika side. This is a different conversation. They could have managed this differently so they were available, Mills. So they could, in the biggest games, have them available. I think they could have won this game. The conditions closed the gap between these two teams. And with those assets I talked about, they could have won and they'd be thinking differently about where they might sit in 3 weeks' time.
They obviously are what-ifs. They weren't anticipating the Brumbies were going to name an understrength side also to go to Perth, but I get why Jason Holland did it. You put your side out to get beaten up again, then so it's supposed to put them up against the Moana Pasifika. Should we be doing it for the? Should this be happening? Only World Cup year. Perhaps the other years not. And I think you've got to get to the bigger picture. This is why it was the All Blacks coaches.
Let's talk bigger picture then.
Okay. No. I've got two questions, and very, very quickly. Should this happen?
No.
Yes or no?
Happen.
Yes or no?
I'll answer it. Only World Cup year.
The fans are
Only
the ones
World
that
Cup.
miss
You're
out.
saying yes, it should happen in the World Cup year.
The problem we've got is it's happened every year. No, it shouldn't happen, right?
My second question is this. How do we stop this happening? Is it working for us? What are the rules now? So really, from a fan point of view, and this is what I'm talking about, I'm with you. I get, Jason, if he wants to do that, technically that's his job. He gets paid a lot of money to actually study and go, I want to do this. But for the competition,
No.
JK, I want to bring up something that you talked about with us earlier. The fans are the ones that lose out here, right? Because they don't get to see these matchups. Anton Leonard-Brown against Geordie Barrett, Luke Jacobson against Ardie Savea, Lomax against Aidan Ross. But also the All Blacks. Jason Holland said that his players couldn't play 6 in a row if they go through and win the title. 6 derbies in a row. The All Blacks are going to have to do that to win the World Cup, is what you said. So
it's really that's a great question, Kirsty, and it's a great question because I'll never forget Richie McCaw saying that you have to go to Everest 4 times, right, to win the World Cup. So how are we going to practice going to Everest 4 times if we're not actually practicing going to Everest 4 times? Does that make any sense?
And that's why it's not Jason Holland's fault. He's actually staying within what he's been asked to do, which in any other competition, it's not happening. Look at what the Aussies are. They're actually starting to implement that as well. So they can't. But we can't also say, the All Blacks have got to have 6 in a row because they're the ones that are actually wanting this to happen. It shouldn't happen, and I get it, because they go over the end-of-year tour. Perhaps it has to be a model where they go for the first 3 games of every club. Your first 3 games, all the All Blacks are out, and then they filter them back into Super Rugby.
This is a really interesting discussion, because I had this discussion the other day at the airport. And this guy said, why are we always playing the World Cup in October at the end of our season? Why don't we play it every second time in March, at the beginning of our season? Because that's why we're resting guys, right? That's why we're worried about it, because by the end of the season, they're going to get a month off in Europe and we're going to play.
You don't mess with the Six Nations, Sir John Kirwan. You don't mess with them. That's when they play. That's their tournament. You don't mess with them.
Yeah, well, we play at the end of it when they're tired.
We don't mess with it. We're not allowed to mess with that.
3 nations here. Yeah, probably makes sense, right?
Well, look, the All Blacks are trying to win a World Cup at the end of the year. The Chiefs are trying to win a Super Rugby title. They've moved into this championship mentality. It was clear and obvious that Clayton McMillan wasn't happy in Hamilton yesterday. Mills, talk us through that. Explain the Chiefs' playing style in February compared to the Chiefs' playing style in June, July, when the Super Rugby finals come out in 6 weeks' time, and how they actually win.
Yeah, absolutely. And the weather conditions dictated that, didn't they? And I think what probably frustrated Clayton McMillan was the fact that they were still trying to play a model that they had been, in dry instead of wet weather rugby. I think that's going to be the biggest issue for them, is to try and stay, I suppose, disciplined to be able to play something that looks a little bit more boring. They can execute 100%, but if they lose big moments, and I think if you're looking forward into the finals, a Crusaders outfit or a Blues outfit or a Hurricanes fully strength outfit would make them absolutely pay.
Yeah, I think there's 3 things he's looking at here. There's one with Anton Leonard-Brown just before the end of the game. That's a big mistake, not realising time was up. But then there was Damian McKenzie, a kick-off that didn't go 10. and then there was the intercept try. He's looking at that and knowing, right, if he's playing the Crusaders, perhaps the Blues, maybe the Brumbies going forward in the semi-finals or finals, or even a quarter-final, you can't afford to make those mistakes because that's the margins you're talking about. And there's one team that has done that, that's won 6 titles in a row. They don't make those mistakes. In the biggest of games, when it comes down to it under pressure, the Crusaders just go to work, JK. And I think for me, that's what he's looking at. I think he's had a standard set for him about what you need to do in playoff rugby. The one time the Hurricanes won their title, the title they won, remember those 3 weeks in a row, they were horrible, horrible days at Sky Stadium, and they had to play not their style of rugby. They had to find that winning style. I think that's what Clayton McMillan goes, you know what, we've got to be better.
Yeah, look, I don't know, Goldie. I think that we never see Clayton like that. He's normally really, really calm and collective. I think they probably just went off the game plan.
Oh, no, I think most of it they did. I thought they kicked beautifully in most of that game.
Yeah, but there's things going on out there. So an intercept, they might have seen something during the week and you've gone and said, don't do that, and it happens. So there'll be little things that'll be annoying them that they've all agreed to and they're not doing. But it's a hard time for them. You're unbeaten, you then lose, the pressure mounts. You know, winning's hard. I always say that about, and you guys know, when you're an All Black, everyone wants to beat you. So they've got a really big target on their back.
The consequences, I like this from Clayton because he knows, and admittedly, if you're looking forward, they have got a very good team. Good depth, hardly any injuries to sort of key players. This is what's going to come back to hurt them. The consequences, and it's theirs to win. You know, it's theirs to lose if they make decisions like that. And I think he knows in the back of his mind, if he doesn't get his players on that sort of same page in terms of being disciplined, they could lose that to the outfit that you're talking about, the Crusaders who have done it year in, year out. They don't mind winning in a style that everyone's not sort of pleased with.
It's called ugly. It's called winning ugly.
Well, in 6 weeks' time, it could come down to a kicking game, right? And that is our Musashi power play for today. Musashi available at Chemist Warehouse. But, Jeff, who's got the best options in the competition?
A week ago, and this is what Clayton McMillan talked about, they didn't kick well enough against the Reds, the Chiefs. So all of a sudden, the conditions clearly played a massive part in this. But they had variety in their game. They had the short kicking game to find space, and then they had this from Sean Stevenson. And his ability to kick the ball, and that's into a breeze at FMG Stadium. This is a breeze behind them. This is a 55, 60-metre kick. When you can turn the opposition round, and that's what they were able to do, they got a 50-22. They continually applied their pressure by being in the right parts of the field. If you've got the ability to do that and the power to do that, just watch once again, along the ground, through the middle of the park, turning them around. To me, they controlled the territory game. In those conditions, it's exactly what you need. And once again, you go back to the standard that's been the Crusaders with Richie Moana, with David Havili, and when it's been Will Jordan at the back, he's still got that ability.
Can I ask you a technical question?
Sure.
It looks for me like the Chiefs have changed their kicking style. The trajectory off the boot seems to be a lot lower. Is that the case? Do you think they've got a secret Mickey Byrne there? Because their kicking game looks like they've studied it like a Mickey Byrne type.
Well, their technique's really strong, and there's no doubt the long legs of Sean Stevenson. He's always been able to kick the ball a long distance, but his consistency of his form. And Damien McKenzie had how long in Japan? He had a long time, plenty of time to practice and work on it. But for me, when you're winning it by 300 metres, and it was a game where kicking was going to dominate Mills, it was going to control this contest.
You mentioned a very good point. It's variety across the board in the back three. You got Narawa, you got Stevenson, you've also got Itini Nano Seturo. Then you've got Damien McKenzie, and all provide a very long kick, the low trajectory kick also, but they can also up in the air. When you're covering it, you're almost thinking, you know, when you're sort of back there and you're thinking, oh no, I don't want to kick, where's my first five, where's my first five, I've got to pass them. These guys, one pass, someone else will kick. They're happy to play within that sort of movement. This is where they're really dangerous in terms of the ability these guys can do.
Random question for you guys who could kick. That's why Roger Tuivasa-Sheck doesn't play fullback? Because everyone's asking me when I walk through the airport, why don't they put Roger at fullback?
Well, it's hard to know because he was never given the opportunity.
Well, I'll ask you this. At second five, where you suppose you have to kick, has he kicked since he's been in New Zealand?
Can't remember. Can anyone remember? But that kicking game at the back, that's a fundamental part of our game and important for the All Blacks to get right? I mean, that was a pretty good kicking.
Look at the wingers they've got. They are astute kickers.
Yep.
You know, they've taken the game to another level where their wingers can kick long, they can kick short, they can go over the top. So I think they've got a really nice balance. And hence I come back to my point about, why McMillan's probably frustrated, because he knows they can actually provide that game plan. How dangerous are they at the moment?
And the defence is awesome as well. If your kicking game's good and your defence is strong, it goes a long way to winning a competition.
Well, you know what? All of these kids learn at the very grassroots of the game. Ripper Rugby, if you've ever had kids go through Ripper Rugby, you will totally understand this next clip. Now, actually, we may not have... No, we've got it. Spare a thought for the coach, Ben Smith.
Hey team, we're here at the Tyree Sevens. Going to mic up a few of the boys and the young fellas and see how they go. Oh, you finished. Good job, bud.
Fletcher, I'm captain. What does that mean? It means I'm captain. Oh, jeez. Look, it's easier to zigzag through them. Like a swoop. Can we clean up? Let's a try. Same time I show up.
Yep. Way you go, Roman. You go up and have a go.
How about his mate? Hello. Whoa!
Guys, come on, let go. Lukey, let go.
Go, Penis! Go, Penis! Go! I think we are. Won't it?
So we say Green Island, 3 cheers for Tyree. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Ready? You go, Fred.
Green Island. 3 cheers for Green Island.
Hooray. Tyree, that's all good. Right, give some handshakes. Good game. Yeah, cheers, thank you.
Honestly,
Oh, that was awesome.
Give that up to the Highlanders, because that is quality content. Greater minute and a half than I think I watched all weekend. And Mills, you will totally relate to that with your 2 boys in Ripper Rugby.
100%. My ones are at the back picking daisies. So there's no way they're getting amongst it all. Every Saturday morning.
I did that my whole career.
Honestly, that is absolutely amazing. Shout out to those Green Island under-7 kids as well. Well, time now to have a look at the playoff picture. Jeff, this is when you get to come into your own, because finally you get to celebrate something with the Highlanders. They were in the 8th. They've just slipped outside, though.
I'm not celebrating. What do you mean I'm celebrating? They're not in it.
They're in 9th, but they're in a position to be able to make their way into the playoffs.
Well, we've given ourselves an opportunity. There's no doubt about it. But look, if you look at the top 6 and they've gone to work and the Chiefs have been good, this could be vastly different, but it's not. But the loss by the Brumbies, all of a sudden, it opens up a window, a door for teams, and they've got a challenge in front of them because they've got the Chiefs and the Rebels, and the Rebels have got everything to play for. We know the Hurricanes had a tough run home, but there's a lot they can gain from those 2 games. And the Blues will be an opportunity for them when they come here to Eden Park. There's what's in front of the Highlanders. They've got the Reds and the Blues. Look, they'll be looking at the Reds game and going, well and truly, that's a game they'll have to win, but the fight, it is on. How does it sit right now then? Well, we're not in the 8. But I tell you what,
2 rounds to go.
2 rounds to go. Interesting one there is the Blues and Hurricanes at 4 and 5. And the bad thing about that is for them, guess who you get to play if you win? Most likely the Chiefs. That's not good planning if you're them. You should be chasing anything but. Guess who's set themselves up quite nicely?
Crusaders.
Those defending champions.
The Crusaders.
The champions, once again, have set themselves nicely.
Planned it well, didn't they? Again.
They'll say it's on purpose.
They would have wanted top spot because they'd won a home final. They haven't planned to finish 2nd.
I'm not saying anything.
Why not?
Well, I'm just not saying anything.
Do you not like where the Blues are sitting right now? They're back on their form's good. They showed some good signs on the weekend. Bowden Barrett showed some really nice signs.
I'm really happy with where the Blues are sitting.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So they're timing their run like they're saying.
Yeah, look, I think
But now you said you weren't going to say anything. I was just throwing them out there to see where...
So,
see, it didn't take long to bait them into something. It didn't take long at all.
So consistency, guys. One of the other things that you've got to be careful of is when guys are on a roll. You've been players, you know what I'm talking about. You start getting on a roll. Have the Hurricanes thrown themselves out by resting a couple of guys? Are you going to break your rhythm because all of a sudden some things don't work too well? I mean, Clayton was angry, but his team won. That's always nice because you go in on the Sunday or the Monday and you go, look, wasn't good enough, but we still won. When you start losing, start getting some clinks, I said it before, you've got to accelerate into these playoffs. So what we're not talking about when you talk about the numbers is who's actually in form, who's actually accelerating to these playoffs.
Yeah, the Crusaders are starting their run. The Blues actually are. I think the Hurricanes have actually started to time their run a little bit nice because what's going to happen, those senior players that were out against the Chiefs, they're going to come back and bring a lot of energy. They've had that week off. They know they're in the hunt. This game on Saturday against the Blues, where both teams are starting to, just begin their run, I reckon it's going to be a very important one. But I like the way the Hurricanes are sitting. But the Crusaders, for me, I mean, given that they had an under-strength team as well, and some of their big-time players stood up too.
I thought the Chiefs were actually really good. Look, the Hurricanes weren't in that game at all, other than two significant mistakes that were made. One was a long-range try from Josh Morby, and the other one was an intercept from Damien McKenzie he gave away with Braden Yossi, who just went 50 metres to score. Other than that, realistically, the Hurricanes, who were a very good side...
And that's what I'm talking about.
What?
So resting your players, if you actually get beaten in the game, but the scoreboard looks a bit different, that gets to your confidence.
It wasn't just the Hurricanes that rested players over the weekend. The Crusaders rested majority of the All Blacks and still managed to put 41 points on Moana Pasifika. We have to speak about the newcomers in this competition, but JK, here is where your voices come in.
Io, tre voci di corridor. That means 3 times I've heard this. So it's a real secret, don't tell anyone. But I have heard that Eddie Jones has been chasing Levi Amour. I heard the Blues have been chasing Levi Amour. And I heard that the Crusaders have won that chase. What's this? G'day, son. How would you like to come to the Crusaders? And I'm the new All Black coach. I don't know if that... I am a lip reader. And I don't know if he said that. I couldn't quite work it out. I did not. He did not say that. He did not say that. But I've heard from a very, 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 very good Italian source that he is going to the Crusaders and he's on an NZR contract.
Well, the Pope's never wrong, is he?
No, the Pope knows his footy as well.
Yeah.
Well, I can actually lip read, and he did say, "Oh, I've got that contract for you. Sign after the game." He goes, "Yeah, I will, bro. Don't worry, I will." And Razor walked away happy. So, gee, that's big news.
So, if you talk about Moana Pasifika, to get back to your argument, you can probably only talk about him. He's been the outstanding playing from this year. What worries me, Mills, is from a Moana. Let's put it straight on the table. Moana Pasifika should survive. We've got to make sure that we keep this going, but how can someone like Amour then get an NZR contract? I don't understand that. I don't understand the key. What were Goldie Moana Pasifika's key goals for this year? If I remember rightly, it was to create more pathways for Pasifika, more people from the Pasifika islands of Tonga and Samoa getting opportunity. So I always thought that when he was showing form, that he would be picked for Samoa or Tonga. So what am I missing?
Well, he was eligible to play for the All Blacks. He was also eligible to play for the Wallabies.
Yeah.
And he hadn't made a decision and committed to any of those organisations or countries. He was looking at his future, and he's now decided that he wants to be an All Black. He was born in New Zealand, my understanding is right. So he's a player who's spent his whole career playing here. And I understand this has got to be incredibly disappointing and frustrating if you're Moana Pasifika, because you have helped develop him and given that opportunity to play. And he has been outstanding. But
why doesn't he have it? If he's born in New Zealand and grow up through the system, why doesn't he already have a contract?
Well, that's the decisions you have to ask the Highlanders and the Chiefs and the Crusaders up until now. The Blues, for example, you have to ask them. He was part of a Super Rugby franchise. No one decided to pick him up. This has created a pathway. The tough part is the fact this is a team that's really struggling, and their very best player now, Mills, is not going to be playing for them next year. Someone you can build a back line around. They've got to make some changes for this organisation, though.
You do have to start asking questions of the coaches, of the backroom staff. It was any other team in Super Rugby that hadn't won a game this season would be asking these questions. Why do we not of Moana?
Well, why can't he have an NZR contract and play for Moana then?
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, I think they've got to look. I mean, you have to be aggrieved when you are Moana, because what was it set up for? 20% of those players had, well, 80% was supposed to be, align themselves up for, a Pacific Island nation. But then Levi, he didn't get picked up by those other franchises. So he's used this correctly in terms of, everyone wanted him, right? And so here's his opportunity. It's not his fault. It's the system. So shouldn't we then be going to that model where guys can actually play for one and still be playing for Samoa? But what threshold does that leave the Pacific Islands? When are we going to actually start developing like they say they're going to develop it? Because if you look at Samoa, who they would have thought would pick up Levi Moore, or Fiji, I mean, they're thinking, okay, that's awesome. We're now going to pick him up for a national team, but he's not. The
wider discussion here, though, is the fact that I think there's over 25 players who've gone on and played for their country. They've gone on and done that. 28. So 28 of that squad have actually gone on. It has given them a pathway. I think the big challenge we have here is how do we improve their performance in Super Rugby, or is this just them on their journey? What I do understand is the fact that Aaron Major has decided it's time. I don't think he's going to be there in 2024. They're going to be searching for a new head coach like 3 other franchises.
You're telling me you've got a voce de corridoio?
That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm understanding, that he's decided it's time. His tenure is coming to an end. He's going to finish out the season. They're going to need a new head coach.
So that's just disappointing. Well, because, where is the vision in that? You've had a coach now that's leaving in 2 years, after 2 years stint. We've got a guy that's going to the Crusaders. And so Moana Pasifika, who's that on? Where is the vision from Moana in terms of, or have they just patted themselves on the back for getting a team in?
Just quickly, last question for you then. Should this team be based in Auckland?
No, it should be based in Samoa. Because for me, you would be more competitive. Secondly, you would see a lot more of the local talent. And thirdly, we saw the other day there was 3 dogs and a cat watching the game the other night at Mount Smart. So unless the crowds are going to turn up, what are we doing?
They had to bring a dog day in Christchurch. It actually went really well. It was awesome. It's fantastic.
I'd take Fui Fui Mui Mui.
Oh.
3 dogs and a cat, that's all there was at Mount Smart Stadium, apparently. I'm still getting over that comment. Still plenty more to come on the breakdown. We talk All Blacks bolters. Yes, we're saying the word. And we look at the Form 15 from Super Rugby's Round 12. No mai, hoki mai, welcome back into the breakdown. It is round 13 of Super Rugby, not round 12. But anyhow, Black Fern and Sky Sport commentator Chelsea Semple has named this week's Super Rugby Form 15. It's a very evenly spread Form 15 as well. She hasn't been biased at all to her beloved Chiefs. Xavier Numia, Samisoni Tokiaho and Tamaiti Williams make out the front row. Tupou Va'i is in there and Zach Gallagher. Peter Gus, Sawakula, Billy Harmon and Braden Yosse. At 9 and 10, Noah Hotham and Zahn Sullivan. Levi Armour, Bryce Heem in the 12 and 13 jerseys. Kanina Holo, Mark Talia and Will Jordan are her back 3. But let's hear it from Chelsea.
Hey team, here's my Form 15 from Super Rugby on the weekend. A couple of just notable selections from me. I've got young Noah Hotham in at number 9. Out of Hamilton Boys, I've taught him, but not a biased call. I thought with the young team the Crusaders put out, he showed what he can bring, which is a lot of speed and excitement around the ruck. But he also showed a lot of composure and a calm head out there. Also, at number 10 this week, I've selected Zahn Sullivan. He did start at 15, obviously, and I thought he played really well and he looked really comfortable at 15. And when Bodie went down, it was a big challenge for him to drop into that first 5, that playmaker role. And I actually thought he did an outstanding job and showed that he can cover multiple positions. So I'm excited to see what the Blues, do with him for the rest of the season, because he's playing some great rugby. So, sweet.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for picking the team this week. You made a mocker of me. I said that it was unbiased, and then you said you picked someone that you taught in Noah Hotham, but deserved to be in that team. Mills, a lot of non-All Black names in here. Do you like it?
I like that team, actually. I think the one guy that I was pretty impressed with last night's performance was Peter Gus Sawakula. I think he was, really good in those conditions. showed plenty of go forward. His defence effort was outstanding. Braden Yosse, obviously, he had a big game, lots of carries, and I actually Hotham did play really good. Really young talent sort of coming through. So.
Braden, you'll see, there's no Ari Savia next year for the Hurricanes, so all of a sudden here's my starting number 8. How dynamic was he? He worked through the course of the 80 minutes. You want ball carriers at number 8, so John Kirwan, and this guy here, and he showed a turn of foot. We've seen Artie explode when he's got space, but I really like what I saw from this young man. He was good.
Yeah, I think he's got something about him that we need to keep an eye on. He's a young man. He's obviously learning off the master, but he just gets out there. He's a wrecking ball. But I love an unsung hero.
Who's that for you?
Who do you think?
Bryce.
Someone from the Blues.
Bryce.
Yeah,
it was definitely a Blue. Where's the Blues?
So good. So good. He's the type of guy you want on your team. He's played just about every position except halfback. Gets us over the advantage line. He was really good, started really good when he came on against the Crusaders.
So you having him off the bench, though?
For the All Blacks?
Going forward? No, not for the All Blacks. I'm talking for the Blues.
I reckon it's...
Rico Ioane, really good
player. He is knocking on the door for a start.
But where?
At 12.
At 12. So all of a sudden you're changing a game plan that you've based around Harry Plummer because you've chosen not to play Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. Is this just so Roger gets the, you're now not the next best 12? I understand. I think his impact off the bench is absolutely fantastic. He'd play and start for a lot of teams in this competition, no doubt about it. The one for me, Tupavai, and the conditions and the work. Look, Brodie Retallick is Brodie Retallick, but here's a guy who's in a contest to make the All Blacks, and this is a time for him to shine. And I felt for me, he was doing this all night. Ball carry, hand up. He's got all the ability in the world, that versatility to play at 6 as well. Scores a nice try. I think for me, Mills, he's been a big mover this season. The fact they've relied heavily on him, he's looked really good.
Huge mover. I mean, in terms of the locking position, again, last year he played a lot at 6, and so he's got that sort of variety in terms of where he can play. So when you're looking at the All Blacks and you're looking at the locking department, do you take a lock 6 that can actually, have versatility and still? What I love about him is that hard stuff. Because he's a young man. You've got to get amongst, Guzzlin and that, Retallick and that love the contact. He's shown that in the last couple of years that he doesn't mind it either.
Presumably he's going to be the top guy next year if there's no Retallick and no Sam Whitelock.
When we win the final this year, the World Cup final, I think Barrett will be at 6. Just because if we're going to re-meet France again in the final, you saw the Heineken Cup final, their forwards are big, strong men, and I think we're going to have to match that. So I think if he plays with a little bit more freedom for the Chiefs, and that's just confidence, Mills, If he can actually go to the next level now and play with that freedom where he's offloading like a basketball player, I think he's right up there.
Well, you know what? Before we get to the Rugby World Cup, a team has to be selected. We're led to believe in 1 month's time after the Super Rugby semi-finals, a 36-man squad will be assembled for the Rugby Championship. So we thought, you know what? We're going to pick 3 players who we think will be there that may be a little bit of a surprise. Look at that first category. Every single person has picked Amoni Narua. No surprises there. 3 of us have picked Tamaiti Williams, who's been a standout for the Crusaders, and clearly in the third category, we're still looking for our number 6 except JK. He's the only one that's found one.
Well, no, I actually was going to change Asafa for Levi after what I heard today. He could be a bolter, but so I was going to change that. But the discussion around Amor, for me, is Dane Cole's one of our greatest All Black hookers, been around for a long time. Are we going to take him as one of our leaders, as our third halfback? I think the two, not halfback, our third hooker. I think the other 2 have cemented their place. And so that's a real big one for me. I'd love to see Dane there, but does this young fella that's taking his chances take over? And then Roigard, we had this argument before, without a TJ Perenara.
It was an argument. It was a discussion. No one raised any voices. We were just back and forward talking about what we'd prefer to see at halfback.
Yeah, it's an argument if you don't agree with what I say. No, so I want to get into the halfback discussion because I think we have 4 halfbacks. We have 3 halfbacks now that are very similar in the way they play. We've always had that third loose forward type halfback who up until recently has been TJ. Will TJ get back? So are we going to take 3 of the same, or are we going to take someone who can come on late in the game, who's a bit bigger, like your 4th loose forward? That's all I'm saying, right? it probably doesn't have a lot to do with form. It's got a lot to do with, I need to change the picture here. It's France, we're in the final. It's physical. We've got to bring someone bigger on to actually do something a little bit different. So it's not a form discussion, it's actually type of play.
So first of all, I think you've caught Jeff's bug because you lost the brief, mate. Like, Moore's really an All Black. I thought Bolters was someone that hasn't been
So is Blackadder.
Oh, no, but people who aren't regulars, who are incumbents, players that don't just walk into the team, who are in a competition, and clearly Ethan Blackadder's in that competition because you talk about loose forwards and the competition for that 6, 7, 8 role and who's going to be doing what. I think that is the brief because they're in a scrap, and for me Ethan Blackadder's a guy we haven't seen for a while, but he's got great versatility. Jason Ryan loves this guy, and he plays hard. He's a physical presence. Look, he'll throw himself into everything. I don't think you necessarily think he's a bolter, but I need to see him back out on the field very, very quickly. I think they'll find room for a Mills.
I think in my team, he goes all day, every day. I think the makeup of it, and that's where Tupou Vai comes into it because he becomes that sort of lock, and so for me, he's not a bolter.
No, he's not a bolter.
You pick him in there.
When you're looking at a 36-man squad, we can probably all agree with 30.
Hang on, they didn't answer my question, these guys. They just totally ignored me.
What was the question?
The halfback question.
So you're saying...
Halfback question.
Regards the question.
Yeah.
Is he
that's okay. No, I'm not offended.
Huh? Well, is he part of my 3? No, he's not part of my 3 right now. What I can say is the guy who broke his nose last night in Brad Weber, he's part of mine.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the hardest position to pick, I think, because you've got Aaron Smith, Weber, Roy Gard, Whakatawa down there, Christie. I mean...
But the 3 extra players that you've got to pull into that rugby championship squad, you're picking halfback, a blindside. You're picking the positions that you want to see more of, right? So you might take 4 halfbacks. You might take 4 blindsides. No. What are the 3 extra positions? Because we could all pick the 33. The 36 is hard.
Where we're light.
So what are those positions, JK?
Lock, loose forward. So you take someone that we just spoke about, Blackadder or Wavai, play him at lock. Try Scott on the 6. So I reckon 3 extra players. And then I think possibly a different 9 is what I would do. I mean, what are we going to do at fullback, wings? I think that's pretty chosen, but I think those 3 positions. So a lock, a 9 and a 6.
And I'm going to say prop, because we need to find out.
Yes.
Props.
That's why we've all picked Tamaiti, right?
We all picked Tamaiti.
And there's so many injuries in that position.
We need to look at props. We want to look at props, and I can tell you why we're looking at props, because what we've got back-to-back in the first games of the Rugby Championship, we've got a game against Argentina, and then we come back and play against Mount Smart, Mount Smart against the Springboks. So I'm thinking they're going to need a number of guys in the squad, so they'll be looking at, I don't think they'll all travel. I don't think they'll all go in the first game, and they'll be looking at a number of players. No Fletcher Newell, not available. So Tamaiti Williams is a guy who's put his hand up. Tight head prop is an issue for us right now.
I like him, man. And what really stood out was when he had to go to the other side, down against the Blues. So we've always seen how big, he's a big specimen. He loves to get around the field. He's got good contact, but then mentally to go to the other side of the scrum, that's good.
JK doesn't want to talk about
I'm just trying to count how many, that's all. Props.
Plenty.
Well, there's 36 players, remember, so add a couple of extra. Lansdowne Road on the weekend was unbelievable. It was the spot you wanted to be this morning in the European Cup final. La Rochelle going back-to-back against Leinster.
It's the Heineken Cup final, 2023. We are ready to go. Sonia taken short and Jack Holland races away. Back inside to Doug Sheehan. It's the dream start for Leinster. Tackle from Dante. Out it goes quickly. Rothburn out into the corner. And Jimmy O'Brien has Leinster's second try. There's the reverse pass to Sheehan. Doug Sheehan gets his second try. It's one-way traffic. La Rochelle are being blitzed. Short pass, Dante, he's so dangerous, Dante is so dangerous! Out it goes, there's room on the left here, they get the short pass through Jenny! They are fighting back here at the Aviva Stadium, keep it tight for the time being, Jean-Henri Calonne! Can he get it down? George-Henri Calonne, it's scored a try for La Rochelle! Amazing achievement, out it goes from Hastoy! La Rochelle, Heineken Cup champions once again! Look at the scenes on the pitch. Players, coaching staff, the Leinster players down on their hands and knees. They actually are stunned, and so am I after that first 20 minutes.
What a comeback.
17-0 down in the first 12 minutes. That was a great game of rugby, and if you haven't watched it, I urge you to go and see that. Mills, when you saw the crowd, 55-odd thousand people there screaming, and the rugby matched it. It matched the atmosphere.
Yeah, it certainly did. You know, during the day, packed crowd, beautiful stadium, and like you said, Chef, that game was awesome.
Two contrasting styles, and in the end, La Rochelle come over the top. It's Ireland. It's Leinster's Ireland, right? Let's be honest about that. I think 13 of the 15 players, JK, are Ireland. And they played like Ireland, the way that they played, the speed that they played. But in the end, La Rochelle, what did they do? They rolled out their bench. And what did they do? And they showed it when they were here last year against the All Blacks. They brought line speed, and this worked for large parts of the game. They just kept coming forward. But we're aware of this. We understand it. But this is the sort of challenge that we're going to face when we get to a Rugby World Cup. This sort of line speed, we'll have to deal with it. We'll have to have a good and smart kicking plan to slow down their defence. Make sure you don't make errors in behind the advantage line. What really happened, it was interesting about this game, was they found a way, La Rochelle, to then expose it. They started playing the second-man players. You had guys coming at depth and running off shoulders, and you started piercing in behind the defensive line. Jonathan Sexton was not playing in this game. So all of a sudden, they lost a little bit of their control, and I think you saw, this is Ireland and the way they're going to play, and this is France and how they're going to play. To your point, it's about our ability to counter them. Do we beat them at their own game, or do we have to come with our own style?
Well, two of the best nations, right? If you're going to talk about the All Blacks, and if we're third favourites at the moment, you know, Ireland and France, I reckon, have done an amazing job. Yeah. Both very different styles, Mills, and I think the organisation of Ireland or Leinster or whoever it looks like, they're all playing a similar style. The thing I like about France is actually just the size of their forward pack. And at some stage they just go, we are just going to be full on and really, really aggressive. But they've also got some really good ball carriers. So I think that's a really good game, and I'm sure the All Black coaches will be watching it because they are the two styles that you have to cope with. We're going
to get that all the time. It's our ability to be able to handle the fact that we're well behind the gain line. That's where we've come unstuck. We've almost gone into it every time we go, how do we beat the rush defence? It's not, we're going to get beat like that all the time, but how do we then react? Okay, take the pressure off ourselves, go to our kicking game to then try and apply the pressure on the other side. That's where we've really lacked over the years. We've almost thought, let's try and beat this rush defence, beat this rush defence. We've got caught, we're not sure what to do. Let's just keep trying to beat it. And we've almost got ourselves into trouble. Do we have the discipline, similar to what we're talking about with Clayton McMillan, to then kick the ball away and go and feel comfortable going, well, actually, you know what? We're under pressure because we're being caught behind the gain line, but we're now going to put it on you and see if you can get it out of your half.
Yeah, I think for me, this is where we need to take our learning from what we did last year, what we learnt in that Ireland series through the course of the season, and decide exactly how we're going to go about winning this Rugby World Cup. And we've had examples of what we're going to face, like you've just talked about. And for me, it's going to be our ability to execute under pressure and skill. And that's why, and I go all the way back to guys not playing in this contest on the weekend last night, because we need pressure and pivotal moments and pivotal games and your ability to execute under pressure. And that opens the big games. That's why that competition and our future of a Heineken Cup is, you've talked about, us playing different styles is so critical.
I'm going to use a word that Jason Ryan used last week, fellas, trust. So while it might have hurt losing against Ireland and while it might have hurt losing against France a couple of years ago, we know. We've just watched a final, a European Heineken Cup final, and they played exactly, so now they're being predictable. We know we've got to trust this group of players to go, we're gonna
so trust them as to why they've decided the rest period.
Rest people.
Trust them for the Rugby World Cup year, guys. Come on. And then we'll come back and once we won it.
That's worked every year in the past, Mills. That's worked every year in the past.
Oh, well, while these guys continue the argument, or as JK calls it, a debate, we've got a beautiful story coming up with Campbell Johnstone and still plenty more to come on the show. Stay with us.
In Southland today, we're here with Campbell Johnstone, and him coming out this year is really a watershed moment for our rainbow communities, and I think for rugby, to actually say that you can be an All Black and identify whatever sexuality or gender, and you're going to be okay. And I think it's opened the door of possibility for people to see themselves in a game that maybe they haven't or couldn't.
It was an interesting relationship with sport and my sexuality, because I had this sport, the rugby that I'd go to, that I just loved playing and loved being around. It gave me so much joy, so much excitement, so much, just everything. It was my world. And then I'd go home and that same sport, because I wasn't being honest and wasn't being able to be truthful out there, was giving me all this anxiety when I went home. And I'd go back to training and it would all just go away again. So I had this sort of evil battle between it all. And to me, that didn't sit right in my own ideal image that I had of what an All Black would be. And so I would push that away and push that deep down inside, and I would deal with it and just run from that image, because I was scared that the side of my sexuality would derail my whole goal of being an All Black. And I'd like to just make this point very, very clear, that your goals and your aspiration is not determined by your sexuality, your religion, or your race. It's nothing to do with that. It's determined by the effort and the time and the courage and the perseverance that you put into that goal will determine the outcome for you. The enjoyment you get from the game is so great that it just was not going to happen for me to give away the game. So I decided to tell someone. And I decided that I'd tell my parents. It's funny because you build these things up in your head, and in reality, they're probably not as big as you think, but you do. You compound them, you build them up in your head, and you think, oh, this is going to be, a disaster. As I told my parents, and it was very surreal, and it's just like I just told them that we'd, run out of milk. And they sort of just like, oh, yeah, okay, that's fine. We still love you. And I was like, oh, okay, well, if that's all good, we can all move on. Everyone is equal on the field, and it's played with respect. In regards to the equal, no one really has a concern or anything about your sexuality, your religion, your race. It's all about the sport, and that's where it should be. We talk about the simple word of respect. Respect to your teammates. You're playing like a girl, you're playing like a sissy. That doesn't need to come into the whole realm of bringing team members up a level. They understand that everyone will get it wrong now and again. The main message, we want to keep trying. Because sport is a great thing. Like, it's great for your mental health, it's great for your health, great for making friends, keeping you active and happy. Only helps one person. I mean, that's one person back in sport, one person feeling more comfortable in their own skin. That's wonderful, it's been worthwhile.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Campbell Johnstone. There was such an important message in that story, wasn't there, JK?
Yeah, unbelievable, and Campbell's doing a great job. As a game, we are an integral part of our community, and Campbell going out there and having those discussions means that diversity and inclusion is an important part of our game. I was accused by my nieces of being a generational sexist and a generational racist, right? And I was really confronting at the time. But when I went away and thought about it, it wasn't actually my fault, because I was actually brought up in that generation. But there was language in my life that I needed to address and change. And I grew up in the changing room using sexist comments, racial comments that had no meaning behind them, but they just weren't acceptable, Mills. And we've got to have a look at ourselves and make sure that you will make mistakes, but we've got to change this. We've got to lead the way, and Campbell coming out and talking about that is for me, fundamental.
Well, the rugby world this week has been given a harsh reality check when it comes to mental health as well, with the very sad passing of Billy Guyton, who played here for 3 Super Rugby franchises. He played for the Māori All Blacks and for the Tasman Mako as well. Just 33 years old when he passed away. JK, it's devastating. You've seen the impacts this week firsthand as well. Yeah,
I just wanted to have a shout out to the East Coast and the Ngāti Porou. I've been down to the Hawke's Bay and also down to the coast talking about mental health post Gabriel, and it was inspirational, the community coming together. Look, mental health is a huge thing. 750,000 people committed suicide last year. By the end of today, a New Zealand male will be dead. By tomorrow, 2 males and 1 female. We've got to keep talking about this, guys. I don't think there's stigma around this anymore, but we've got to do preventative mental health. In our game, we need to be way more open, just like Campbell's been about diversity and inclusion, Mills. And it just makes me incredibly sad, and we've just got to keep leaning in and keep putting it on the agenda, keep talking about it.
breaks me hearing that sort of figure, JK. But also, you're right. It's Campbell's come out and sort of done that. You've got to keep talking because, and I haven't been through the struggles and had that, but I think on my own personal level, talking about certain things, and I've sort of seen guys go through it, whether it be financial, there's all sorts of things, financial, relationship, post-career, things like that. But the more we talk about it, the more it becomes sort of, all out in the open, and that's an alarming statistic.
It's a challenge for a professional sports person, regardless of what sport you're involved in, the moment that you stop playing and what your future is going to look like. It's not like an industry where you can play and carry on forever. And I've been very fortunate to have an ability to go on and continue my journey inside the sport, where people just don't have the luxury and that opportunity, Sir John Kirwan. And it's tragic, this news, but it's understanding, having, I suppose, the right ways of dealing with the challenge.
When you start playing at a young age, you identify yourself through your sport. You shouldn't do that. Campbell just mentioned that. You're not your sport. And the second thing is, we've got to be way more vulnerable. I was scared to be vulnerable, but vulnerability is a key strength. So if we can accept those things, and when I say put it on the agenda, Mills, in our rugby, in our lives, we've got to be actually, like we talk about a game plan, we've got to start bringing up these things. It's hard when you retire. It's really hard to retire from any sport, but it is not prejudice, people. It will get anyone, and we just need to be open and honest about it. What are we doing to prevent it? Just like you stretch your muscles before you train, what are we doing it to prevent it? We just got to keep doing it.
I think we can all say that our thoughts, our love, our araha is with the Guyton family and to the entire rugby community as well. JK, is there something that you would like to say to Billy's family?
Yeah, died of an illness. I had that illness, and I'm one of the lucky ones, but it'd be an incredibly tough time. So thoughts are with you, and remember the great things.
Thank you so much, JK. And to Billy, moi mai rā i te rangatira.